This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Delvers? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friend Ben here, and we are talking, doing some prep for Defiant, the fourth and final book of Sanderson's Skyward series. Started with Skyward, and then Starside, and then Cytonic. And it's been a while since I personally have read any of these books. I read, I guess, Cytonic came out, 2021, a couple of years ago. And maybe I reread them. I don't remember. So I'm a little rusty on the details here. But the goal of this podcast is for Ben, who has recently reread the books, to give us a bit of a primer. And I'm going to serve the role of the of the noob, I guess.
Yeah, and I recently reread Starsight and Cytonic, but not Skyward, just because I remembered Skyward all right, and I remembered that it doesn't really relate to anything that's going to be happening going forward. Like kind of after after they kind of break out of detritus, we spend a lot of time more outside detritus than inside. So
weirdly, I remember Skyward as well. Maybe I read it twice and the other ones once or something, but it's also like a pretty straightforward plot.
Yeah.
Like battle school, they go and fight the aliens. There's not that much to it.
It's like Ender's Game, like
kinda,
YA, more YA. Yeah. But I have not read the kind of the novellas that they've put out.
Yeah,
I think there might only be one now.
There are three.
There's three novellas?
Yeah, they're published together in a book. It's called Skyward Flight.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read those either.
I'm hoping that do you know if they've combined them on one into like an Audible or no?
I don't know.
Because it was never worth 3 credits to me. It would be worth 8 credit. So
right.
So,
yeah, we'll have to follow up on that. So I have the physical book that's like published together. So if they can do that, like hopefully they can just slap the 4 MP4 files together into a single Audible file.
I'm sure they could. I don't know how much incentive they have to do that.
I mean, if there's an author who's going to do it, it's probably going to be Brandon, because he's like pretty cognizant of trying to give his readers stuff.
I also mean, like, I know that it has, like, for that series in particular, they have like an exclusive deal with Audible, and so I'm not sure how willing Audible would be to let them combine 3 books into one. So who knows? But
we'll have to follow up on that. But so that may be a little bit of a gap. From what I've heard, those stories are like they're good supplementary knowledge to the world, but I imagine that it's going to be kind of like the Stormlight Archive novellas, where it's like cool, but you can still read the mainline books just fine.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I also think that, I mean, we'll get into maybe our critiques of the series, but I think that it might help resolve some of my critiques of the series overall. But so overall, we're billing this as everything you need to know to get ready to read
Defiant.
Defiant. And I think with a little bit of review, because we can't help giving our opinion on these things. So
yeah, I'll give an opinion for books that I don't even remember. There you go. If you want to hear that, keep on listening.
Okay, so we get to jump into an ad break and then start.
Yep. Ads coming now. And now we will continue. So Skyward. Let's do a brief recap. We both kind of remember this one. We're probably not going to have the same level of detail as books 2 and 3 since you recently read those. But from what I remember, I mean, Spensa is kind of the outcast kid. Her dad had that weird history, and she goes through this journey to figure out that her dad was what's the term for the people, a cytonic, right? That's the
cytonic
term. Yeah,
but she doesn't really know this to start with, and all she knows is that her dad was a traitor, right? That he ended up killing a bunch of members of his own flight,
right? So she is kept out of school for a while, and then she gets in with help from the grizzled schoolmaster guy, Cobb, right? He's like the flight instructor, and he was previously friends with her dad.
Yeah, I think that they were like wing partners or whatever.
Okay. And throughout the course of this, she makes friends with the other kids, and some of them die. But then there's like a core group that continues on, and one of them is Jorgen, who becomes the, like, not in this book, but later on he kind of becomes the will they won't they romantic interest.
I think a little bit in this book too. I think for sure in this book. I think at the
Okay.
beginning, yeah, by the
Hmm.
beginning of Starsight, they she already feels bad about leaving him.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so I think for sure at in this book. Also, we should point out that we're going to do spoilers, right?
Yeah, I
For
mean, hopefully people know there's going to be
yeah,
spoilers in a
okay. Just
primer
wanted
for the fourth book in a
explicitly.
series.
I could just imagine that first YouTube comment is beware of spoilers. Anyway,
Yeah, I think people would get it. I mean, come on, it's on you at some point, right?
sure. Okay, so yeah, so uh we should also point out that Spencer, who's this main character, has all these quirks about her, right? She likes to envision herself as a hero of all that about stories that she's been told from her
Mm,
grandmother. She has quirky nicknames that she gives everybody. Jorgen's his jerk face. And with a nickname like that, how can you not be the love interest, right?
right,
Um,
right.
and so yeah, you have and she's just very much an oddball, right? She talks about wanting to like, I don't know, feast off of the blood of her enemies or whatever. Like after
Oh,
everything,
right, right.
she'll kind of
It's,
say these bloodthirsty comments.
yeah, there's definitely kind of the over the top layer of Brandon Sanderson young adult cheesiness that happens.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be a Sanderson YA without that.
Hmm.
Um, and then I forget. I think it's about halfway through the book. She finds this ship that's buried in the mountains of detritus, or in the not the mountains, but the caverns.
Like caverns. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And in this ship, she also finds her animal companion, who is Doomslug. And the ship, and she fixes the ship up with the help of one of her trusty mechanic friends. I forget what his name was.
It's like Rig. Is it Rig?
Rig. Yeah. Yeah. It must be Rig with a name like that. How could it not
Yeah,
be, right?
right. Yeah.
um, yeah. And I guess some kind of supplemental knowledge I have about this. The Sanderson that said that this is kind of his first use of a dragon, right? Not like a dragon, but like he's
Yeah.
kind of harnessing kind of his dragon lore to put on Mbot, who's the artificial intelligence in the ship, to kind of and the kind of like this wise um mentor that's not exactly human, that will help her heroine throughout her
Hmm.
journey. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right. Like he's wanting to put dragons into his books, but I don't remember exactly what he said about this. Did he say it's like just too cliche? There's too many books with dragons, so he hasn't done it as much, and he's like looking for the right opportunities to like really
Yeah,
make dragons cool. And
I think he's probably talked
so
about it a few times, but
yeah,
yeah, that I think. Oh, who's the? Is it Anne? What's her name? Like, there's an
Anne
author that's
McCaffrey.
like Anne McCaffrey that's famous for her depiction of dragons, and he said that he's been like incredibly influenced by her, and so he hasn't wanted to put dragons in yet because he feels like it would just be lifted too much. I think I
Mm,
remember like
okay.
a word like him talking about this one time, and so he was wanting to make sure that he has enough of a unique perspective on stuff before he starts throwing dragons into his
Right.
book.
And there's going to be dragons in mainline Cosmere books. Well, we're not going to do spoilers for that stuff, but
Right. Yeah.
yeah, I imagine like in the future that will become a bigger thing.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, so she finds a ship, and of course, that kind of gives her the upper hand in all sorts of battle situations. She's also, you see her training, you see her fail a lot more times than she succeeds, but eventually and again, this is years ago that we actually did a review for this book, I think, at one point. So go see our review from like 2019. Did we not, or did we just
I
do it for
I don't know if
Starsight?
we have a review for Skyward. We definitely have one for Starsight. And then my sister and I did a review for Cytonic because she
Okay,
was into these books. I don't know if we ever did one for Skyward, to be honest.
okay. Well, it definitely predated Fantology.
Is
So
like very old. Like these are, I think that Star Site review might have been like one of our first 10 ever.
yeah,
And
for
this is
sure.
going to be episode like 270
Yeah,
something.
it's crazy. Um, is your sister still reading these books?
Yes, she will be returning home from her mission and
Oh,
reading the last one. I hope. Like we'll see.
okay, nice.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So and then also kind of like some words of Sanderson. Um, Doomslug was created by his kids, apparently. They said that they,
Oh, really?
yeah, it's like I think
Okay.
they, and who knows what that means, created or whatever, but
Right. Right.
inspired by. Um, so yeah, so that's kind of all my external knowledge there. But I forget exactly what happens, but there's battles in the sky all the time with the drones that the captors are sending down to keep the people in line. And then there's, I don't know, I forget what the conflict is at the end that kind of speeds
Yeah, I think
everything
there's
up.
like a final battle where they come with like a special ship that's gonna like destroy the base once and for all.
Yeah,
Basically Star Wars, and then she's able to go in with Mbot and win somehow, but then she ends up realizing stuff right at the
she
very end.
cytonically transports back to detritus. Yeah,
But she goes up like into space and realizes that like, hey, detritus is a jail for
yeah,
humans, and there's aliens circling around, and they're just like here to make sure we don't do anything.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
and
there's
I
some
for
backstory of like the humans were too violent, aggressive, so the aliens like put them there on purpose.
I think that
Blah
we
blah,
find a
and
lot
we
of that
like
out in
slowly
Starsight.
learn more. Okay.
Yeah, that's mostly Starsight. So I think that that's kind of a good place to end off with Skyward.
Mm.
And I'm sorry, I didn't reread Skyward. So
I
but
think we did a
again,
decent job for
yeah,
not rereading, but
yeah,
yeah. One thing that I like about this series that starts off right here is I like the like battle mechanics for
yeah.
for all the fighting. And we've seen, I mean, in books and TV shows and movies, we've seen a lot of different star fights, right? Starfighters
Yeah.
since Star Wars. And I think that Sanderson does some cool, unique things. Like, I don't know if they're like super unique, but just the way that it's
Well,
executed
like the
is
light
done well.
lances, I think, right, where
Yeah.
they can spear objects and use that to
Yeah. They
swing
have a
around,
few
and
fun tools, and the whole thing
the
of like
shields.
they've got the EMPs that they can use if they get
Yeah,
in close, but if they do it, then they disable themselves. So they have to all work together to use this ability, but not, destroy themselves in the meantime. So there's
very
some
cool.
good
Yeah.
things. Like it's basically a magic system that's a sci-fi system. It's not
Yep.
fantasy magic, it's sci-fi magic.
And I remember him saying that he interviewed lots of pilots to kind of get the physical feelings down, and so I
Mm.
know that he kind of did his research before starting this. So, and it seems like a lot of, I mean, from what I the feeling on like our Discord and on Reddit, like a lot of people really like Skyward. I've heard a lot of people talk about how it's like one of their favorite female protagonist YAs. So I don't know. I think that um Skyward was great. I think it holds up really well. I've recommended it to a lot of my like nieces and nephews. I think
Mm-hmm.
kind of one of my main critiques of the series is that you spend so much time on detritus and you get to know this core group of people that you really come to care about, and then suddenly in the second book they're just not there anymore. And that's really, I think that was very jarring for me when I read it, and actually caused me to take a pretty long break from the series, because I was like, why do I care about, you know
Mm.
like I liked Spencer as part of this like cohesive whole that she's built. And yeah, so I don't know, it was kind of, that's kind of one of my criticisms overall. But I also like, after finishing Cytonic, we were just trying to get the series, and he couldn't have gotten there if they just stayed on detritus the whole time. So
Mm. And in the first book, it's mostly human characters. Well, I mean, totally 100% human characters,
100%, yeah.
except for Mbot,
And
I
bot,
guess.
yeah.
Yeah. But then you go into books 2 and 3, and there's these alien characters, and they're kind of strange alien races, and there's like a lot of them, and they just
Yeah.
feel kind of strange. They've got funny names. They're not as relatable, and so yeah, like you say, all of a sudden, yeah, I kind of like the humans, and I don't know if I connect with these
Yeah.
kind of bizarro things going on.
And it's kind of like Spencer already did the job of digging herself out of like the um not having a place in society, right? So she already kind of went through that effort. But I guess we should talk a little bit more about Starsight so we can kind of have this
Yeah,
discussion in a
yeah,
more like
okay.
informed
So
way.
rolling into Starsight then.
Yeah. So we have so at the very beginning of Starsight, we have a ship that crash lands on detritus, and there's like an alien there named Alanique, and she's human-esque, you know, but not human. Um,
Hmm.
and kind of in the very beginning of the book, they're also like trying to make these holograms that are able to disguise the ship, disguise Mbot. And so they say, oh, why shouldn't we be able to use this holographic system to disguise Spencer? And um, Spencer figures out that Alanique was kind of being recruited to the big spaceship that's orbiting the planet, and she decides
Hmm.
that she's going to take her place to go infiltrate their enemies.
Does Alanik, did she die or did she
No,
survive
she doesn't
this?
die. She's injured, but
Okay.
I think you find out. I think either at the end of Starsight or beginning of Cytonic that she survived.
Okay. So Spence's headed off to battle school level 2 up here with the aliens disguised as the friendly alien.
Yeah, exactly. And she's able to infiltrate them surprisingly easily, right? For whatever reason. It's but as she's doing this infiltration, she ends up kind of forming a new cohort of people
Hmm.
that she's able to train for battle. And she starts to see um these aliens as being human, not human, but like that they're
She
not just
sees
like
the
some
like
mindless
humanity
captors.
in
Yeah,
them.
she sees the humanity in them, right? And so that kind of throws her off. So some notable people here um is you have Braid, who's the other human here that's been adopted at
Right.
an early age and raised um to be part of the system. And uh, she's told that she's violent, that she'll never have a place in society, and she ends up kind of believing it, right? And Spencer tries to um, recruit her by revealing herself near the end of the book, and it ends up backfiring on her.
And she's a Cytonic as well.
Mm-hmm.
And she's pretty powerful, good pilot. Like she's a formidable enemy.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so we also uh, we also meet some high-ranking members of the superiority, which is the government that's kind of
Mm,
controls the whole
right,
entire galaxy.
right.
Um, so we have Kuna and we have Winzik. Um, and oh gosh, I'm forgetting which one's which.
I think Winzik is the one that's kind of becomes somewhat of an ally, and
Yeah,
Kuna is the bad one.
yeah. So yeah, that sounds right. Um, yeah, we'll go with Winzik. Um, so he's a Krell, like the kind of crab like
Okay.
people, right? Um, so is he? Wait, is Winzik bad? Ah, come on.
Pretty
Let's see.
sure Winzik is good. Or
Okay,
he's
Winzik's
like
good.
he might be bad at first, but then he comes around or yeah, I don't remember the details. Anyway, I imagine like I don't remember what race they are, but I imagine both of these characters as like the enemies in Jimmy Neutron, the you know the
Yeah,
gelatinous things that are in the little enclosed hover thing. I don't remember what their race is, but they're like the
yeah,
goofy enemy leaders basically.
yeah. Okay. Okay, but bottom line is that she has some allies in the government by the end of the book. She ends up revealing herself to Winzik, and he says, "Oh my goodness, I always knew that we could have a relationship with humans. That's awesome." But then Kuna still has, so Kuna's main objective, if we're getting the names right here, is to try and harness the Delvers that are this and I guess we've made it this far without talking about them, but they manifest themselves to Spensa as these like just lights or eyes that she sees when she's traveling cytonically. And she learns I think it's in Starsight, I think it's at the beginning of Starsight, that they have totally, they were responsible for wiping out detritus because the humans tried to summon them and use them against the superiority and end up consuming the human planet instead. And then they also kind of went on this like juggernaut killing spree across the universe, and that they're kind of attracted to cytonic travel, as well as like any radio communications. And so this kind of through the superiority and the galaxy kind of back, not into the dark ages, right, because they still had technology, but they had to kind of go radio silent for a long period of time until the Delvers kind of went back into nowhere. So I think that, so that's the Delvers. So Kuna's new plan is to basically do what the humans tried to do and use the Delvers to eradicate whoever his enemies might be.
And that's kind of what happens at the end of the book. I think he has Braid try to summon, or wait, it's Braid, right?
Yeah, Braid.
That's the name of the, yeah. So she does summon a Delver, and like she sets it on detritus, and Spensa comes in and just like, no, I'm gonna send you back to what's the name of the platform that they're out there, and anyway, like the superiority place.
Yeah.
But then she realizes like, hey, wait, this is gonna be really bad for the human reputation, so she just like dismisses it. Or
no, she doesn't dismiss it. So she like has this interaction with it where she's able to show the Delver that they're humans and that they're kind of self-aware and that they're not just these like annoyances. And the Delver ends up like listening to her, and it's not in the, but well, I guess since we're treating this all as one recap, that Delver ends up taking the form of what's his name?
The character, like the Chet character,
Chet,
like
the Delver
goofy
ends up being
explorer guy in the next book. Yeah,
that Delver ends up becoming Chet in the next book. Anyway, so she's able to kind of show the Delver the humanity, and that frightens all the other Delvers because we learn that the Delvers like are afraid of change. They want to remain consistent, constant. They don't like change, so they see this as kind of like an existential threat. So but that all kind of comes later. She's able to show the Delver humanity, so the Delver changes course, and Spensa saves the day yet again. In the midst of all of that, she makes friends with all these people, all these superiority fighters. You got like you got Vapor, who's that kind of mist that is able to infiltrate the ships. And she's important. You have Captain Heshno, Hesho, who's the
he's the gerbil fox
guy,
and he's got like he's like the king of the gerbils, and
he's definitely not a king, Stephen. He's democratic. It's like a running joke throughout is that he has to claim that he's democratically elected, but he's the king.
But he's got all of his subjects or citizens that are also like on the ship with him, and together they're just
they're piloting.
I don't remember too much of which humor I liked and which I didn't, but I do remember that I thought Hesho was funny, and we think that he dies in this book, but then he comes back.
Then he comes back
next book.
And then we have Mortimer, who's kind of she also helps to save the day, because I forget, it's like something about her dual nature. But she's like the alien who's an embryo, essentially, where she's kind of a combination between both of her parents, and they can decide.
It's like they decide the gender later on or something.
No, it's
different.
It's not deciding the gender. It's just deciding if she has the right personality that they want to have.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, there was something unique
and
about that race. I don't remember all the details, but yeah.
yeah, but so, and I guess kind of as part of this overall culture is they hate violence. They all say my aggressive, like they
Mm.
their whole thing is to not have any aggression. And it's interesting because you find out later that their home world, there's no like carnivores, right? There's no aggressive species. And so they evolved as this very non-aggressive species. And so they're imposing that on the galaxy, which is, I guess, an ultimate good. But the way they do that is just either by annihilating everybody that's not going to be non-aggressive, or by marooning them because by withholding cytonic travel. So anyway,
Mm.
kind of interesting background there. Um, we also learned that the secret to cytonic travel is the Doom Slug, which is a big
Right.
Sanderson reveal. There's hints dropped throughout the book where she's reading about the fact that like, oh, these slugs are super poisonous, and you find them, then report it to the superiority, and she's like, hold on,
Mm.
they're not poisonous. Like, Doom Slug isn't poisonous, right? So you have this like all these hints that nobody catches on to until the very end when it's revealed that it's
Yeah,
that,
I remember that was a fun reveal, a good Sanderson reveal. There's a name of the race of the slugs too. They're like Tay something.
yeah, what is
Starts with a T, something like that. Probably not
yeah.
super important, but yeah, look that up if you're interested.
Yeah, and you also
So
find out that that's the reason why Mbot chose detritus to go visit, is because they have this big population of those slugs.
hmm,
And I guess Mbot's core function was to find fungus, right? And then the fungus end up being the food for the slugs.
okay.
So that was also
So it
like
all
I
ties
think that,
together.
yeah.
So at the end of the book, Mbot is like disabled and now exists only in the drone form. The
Mm-hmm.
ship is destroyed, and then Spencer and Mbot and Doomslug escape into the nowhere, which sets
Mm-hmm.
up Cytonic, beginning of Cytonic, and Cytonic starts like immediately after the events of Starsight, and they're off in kind of this strange. When I was reading Cytonic, I envisioned it felt a lot like a video game to me with like different
Mm.
kind of weird levels, almost like a Jumanji type thing go on, or I don't know what you'd call it, but it's definitely a strange setting and another very different setting. So if you were hoping that it was
Right.
going to return back to your human friends from Skyward, again, maybe a little disappointed.
Yeah, and this is the part where I ended up bouncing off the series. I remember we had an arc for Cytonic, and I read like the first quarter of it, and I couldn't. It was just, I don't know. It wasn't hitting me right, and so I this is why I bounced off, and then I read Cytonic for the first time
Okay.
just this past month, because I was able to listen to it all right, but it was one of those books that I didn't want to read for whatever reason.
Mm.
So but it was good. And again, this was like the classic. Oh man, I just spent like had the same problem as Starsight or as Skyward to Starsight, right? Where you have like you've like she has all new friends. She like that she's worked a long time to build. She's made all this
Mm-hmm.
progress, and now she's like isolated from all that again. So it's just like okay, like what's going on. It's
Pressing the reset button once again.
right, which Anderson notoriously like doesn't like when like TV shows and stuff do that, right? He's like, you can't press the reset button too many times. Which granted, he doesn't do that for Spencer, right? Her character arc is continuous, like right? She's continuing to learn and grow, and she's
Mm-hmm.
keeping all the lessons. She's not like making the same mistakes. Um, but you're situationally resetting her, and the fact that she's now still having to like build from the ground up.
So this is where you're saying maybe the Skyward Flight novellas help kind of fill in the gaps.
Right. They
And
might
I think they
supplement
do.
this.
One of
Yeah.
them is Jorgen. One of them is, sorry, from that character perspective. One is mostly Jorgen. One is from another one of her friends. Don't remember which one. It's one of like her female human friends that's a pilot. And I think one of them is Alanique. Maybe
Oh,
I'm,
there you go.
yeah, I think that's true. Not 100%. Because obviously I haven't read them. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe we should try to squeeze those in real quick before Defiant. But
Yeah, that could be.
Regardless. Yeah. Okay. So
Right. Does that
Cytonic,
make sense? Like if that
yeah.
does like fill in the gaps there, then great. I'm happy to like reevaluate. And I think that's probably a lot of the feedback that he's been getting. So yeah.
Okay, just want to clear a couple things up here. So first of all, we made a big mistake earlier with Winzik and Kuna. We got those characters mixed up. Kuna is the one who becomes something of a friend to Detritus, while Winzik continues to be a big antagonist and really like the biggest bad out there. So that was a pretty big mistake from us. Secondly, unfortunately, there is no bundle of the 3 Skyward Flight audiobooks together. I guess Audible, Amazon, whatever could not work that out. So if you want to listen to those, you do have to get them all separately or just try to get them individually from your library. I also want to do a quick rundown of a summary of the 3 books. I went ahead and read through the summaries on Coppermind, and I think there's really like kind of a lot of material there, maybe more than I was thinking. And in starting Defiant, that stuff is important. It is summarized at the beginning of the book, but I do think you want to know at least the high-level beats there. Okay, so first one is called Sunreach. This is a FM perspective book. This one's fairly straightforward, so they figure out a lot of the Tanix powers, and they get a lot of the slugs, then they're not able to like harness their powers, right? They defend against a superiority attack from above using a interplanetary shield that they're able to get up kind of just in time. And they rescue Kuna from Sunreach, which is like a research platform that's kind of out there. I don't know all the details there, but basically what you need to know is Kuna is now on board, a full member of the team, essentially, and we are powering up Detritus. Book 2, Redawn. This is an Alanik perspective, and her people, the Urdile, at least a faction of her people, are considering a peace treaty with the superiority. And it turns out also some of the humans on Detritus are considering a peace treaty with the superiority. The Skyward Flight goes rogue. They do not believe this is going to work out at all. And in fact, it's not going to. The superiority has an evil plot. They're able to stop it just in time. However, most of the human political leaders, including Jorgen's parents, are killed in a massive explosion. Cobb and Gran are saved, but sent off to whereabouts unknown. Last book, Evershore. This is from Jorgen's perspective, starts right after the events of Redawn. So it turns out that Gran and Cobb are off on Evershore, which is the Kitson planet. So Skyward Flight heads over there. They try to make an alliance with Kitson. In the meantime, Jorgen kind of powers up his cytonic abilities, learns a few more things that he can do. The superiority once again comes in and attacks, kind of a theme of all 3 of these books. These guys cannot stay away. Eventually, we are able to drive them back once again, kind of save the day. And the way that this happens is we basically power up Detritus using the Tanix powers that were hinted at before, and using some of what I'm assuming is kind of a gradual build-up of the different platforms around Detritus. The whole planet gets cytonically teleported over towards Evershore, and now the 2 planets are nearby each other. This causes a tidal wave, which luckily we're able to mitigate most of the problems. Evershore is like a fully water planet. But anyway, at the end of the day here, we're able to stave off another superiority attack and forge somewhat of an alliance with the Kitson. Gran and Cobb are saved, and we are just left wondering what's going on with Spensa. All of these books take place during the time that Spensa is out there doing her thing during Cytonic. So now that she has come back at the end, I'm assuming Defiant, and I've seen this from just the first chapter of Defiant, kind of deals with the fallout of these books, and I think it is important knowledge to have. I started reading it and I was a little confused, so I decided it was worth it to read the Coppermind summaries at least, which go pretty quickly. They're not long books. So I don't know how to rate these books exactly since I didn't actually read them, but it does sound like they do a lot to mitigate Ben's criticism of, hey, these books, the main 3, right, are going on with Spensa always kind of forming a new cast of friends, and this is jarring. But if you actually read these books, the Skyward Flight books, you get a backstory of the friends that we know and love, what's going on with them. I think probably you get a better Skyward experience if you actually read these. So I'm going to say you should At this point, I'm into Defiant, so I'm not going to have time to go back and read them, but maybe one day I will circle back. So now, okay, back to the rest of the review.
Carrying over is that Spencer left Mbot behind. She did go back for him, but she left him behind to escape back to try to warn the people that the Delver was coming. And so Mbot feels very betrayed when he gets to nowhere. And he is like, he understands why she did it, but he feels very betrayed. And so this is kind of the start of Mbot having emotions. And you
Okay.
also, I mean, he can't have had emotions before, but this is like emotions on steroids. And it's also kind of weird because when he went to the drone, Mbot, like his processors weren't going as fast. But now when they get to the nowhere, he's able to think like his old self again. And you end up finding out that this is because they're closer to the nowhere, which is, I guess, feeding into the next big reveal, which we can talk about now, or we can talk about when we get closer to the end. But
No, yeah, let's keep on following this here. So I don't remember exactly what happens here with Mbot. There's something about AIs and Delvers, and
yeah,
he is a Delver? Is that the thing?
yeah, he is like AIs were Delver. So it was something like whoever the first explorer was, I think it was something like super white name, like Jason Wright or something like that. Like,
Yeah, I think it was Jason. That sounds right.
yeah, something like
Maybe
that.
like a Greek Jason in the Argonaut thing or something. Anyway, yeah, Jason, sure.
But so he has this AI. I think he also like lost his wife or something. And he goes to the nowhere and the AI Jason ends up dying, and while like feeding in, and this is like I got a little confused. It wasn't super clear to me. I like went back and re-listened to it too, and I still didn't like pick up on all the pieces. But basically what ended up happening was that the AI got like the pain of the creator's death without any way to cope with it. And the whole time you're seeing Mbot trying to cope with his emotions, which this original AI couldn't do. And so instead of coping with it, they like basically create like a loop in their code and like pushed all that away. And the primary directive became not to change, to like stay stagnant. And
Mm.
then anything that threatens that is to be avoided and to be wiped out.
And as part of this, the AI like made a bunch of copies of itself, and so then
Yeah,
like the Delvers are born, and
exactly.
they are a problem.
They are a problem, and they reside in the nowhere, but that's what they can be lured out of the nowhere through um like faster than light travel,
Mhm.
and faster than like communication.
Through the established ways that we know the Delvers are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they also, the nowhere, we find out that the place that Spence is at is like the boundary between the nowhere and the somewhere, and that you kind
Okay.
of get a mixture of both. You have like the individuality of the somewhere that's creeping closer to nowhere, which is trying to like eliminate that individuality, and and the Delvers are kind of can kind of impact what goes on there, but every time they
Mm.
do, they lose some of their individuality, which they don't like. Um, and they're also, this is the place that they harvest like the acclivity stone, which is what they use for a lot of the ships and whatnot. So you have all
Oh,
these,
right.
right?
That's the
Yeah,
stuff that since the first book has been falling on detritus, and they have wars over this stuff.
yeah. And so, um, so the superiority kind of treats it kind of like
Mm.
as kind of like a prison, like forced labor camp where they just kind of send people in there to mine and to fend for themselves. Find out that there's like three mining colonies. We only ever meet like the one, so there's like people that live there. Um, but
And the
kind of
background and like running plot of this is Spence arrives here. She meets up with the Chet dude who's super sus and weird, but we eventually learn that he is also a Delver. What's his deal?
yeah. So he was the
Or
Delver that
he was the
she,
Delver that, but there was also a connection to Mbot's like original pilot, right?
yeah. So he, um, Yeah, Mbot's original pilot because there's a portal in detritus that goes to the nowhere or to this limbo area. And when Chet, the Mbot's pilot, crashed, he went through that portal and ended up trying to get to like the big bright spot of nowhere. And as he did that, the Delvers basically consumed him. And this Delver remembered enough of that consumption to like take on his personality and his shape
I see.
or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the background of all of this is Chet and Spencer are like walking this path of the elders, right? Isn't that what it's called? And Spencer is learning more of basically what you just explained as the book goes on. But then there's also these mining colonies and pirates that she runs into at some point, and there's some conflicts.
Yeah, so this
throughout.
is kind of a cool part. She kind of she gets adopted into this pirate clan who had, and I forget what the name of the matriarch of this pirate clan is, but you find out that she's had a plan for years to attack the mining camp, like the superiority camp. And in order to do that, she like staged a rebellion, but two of her sons broke away. But that was all kind of planned out because she wanted to train everybody up in order to have enough skill to go against the superiority. So they made these rules where they couldn't actually shoot to kill. They were just kind of like shooting to disable. And so you had like these pirate colonies fighting against each other, but really training unbeknownst to them in order to go attack the superiority.
Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Which is
I'm scanning classic. The internet here. I think that character's name is Peg.
Peg,
the pirate leader.
How could she not be with a name like that?
Right.
So,
go ahead.
Yeah. So again, classic. It's really compelling, really cool Sanderson plot. And in a self-contained sense, again, all these are really cool books, but the cohesiveness just isn't there for me. Because I don't know, it's just, and I'm not trying to be too critical because, like, again, these are the books that Sanderson writes when he's not writing like a Stormlight book, right, or a Cosmere book. So I think he deserves to have some fun with them and just kind of explore where his imagination takes them. But so I don't want to be too critical, but again, it is clear that he's just kind of like doing whatever his imagination wants him to do. So
I feel like to some degree, these books are like his sci-fi practice as he gets more into like the Cosmere is aging up into sci-fi age, which we saw a bit in Sunlit Man, which is way in the future and is much more sci-fi than fantasy. Not to say that this is going to be the same vibe as future Cosmere books, because this is so very much young adult.
It's dabbling. Yeah, very much young adult.
But I'm encouraged by it. Like, I think all of the sci-fi plots are cool and unique. And again, like I said, the execution of the battles has been fun throughout. So that's encouraging because it seems like even as he gets into sci-fi, he's going to be able to keep that Sanderson flair to his plots and twists and systems.
Yeah, exactly. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And it's also, I'm trying to decide if I like the Delvers as AI twist, because at some level I do, and I think that it's like the whole surprising yet inevitable thing that that he tries to nail so well. But also it's like, okay, I don't know.
It's AI again, really?
It's AI again.
Is that what you're thinking? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But also it's like, so they're just like these mindless code loops that just go around and destroy things. It just like, I feel like Sanderson is so skilled at giving villains, like he can make a good villain. You know what I mean? And it doesn't seem like these are good villains. But so you also kind of in Cytonic, she also has this reality stone or reality token or whatever that gives reality ashes, and it starts off, it's her father's like detritus pin, DDF pin, and she ends up burying it because she doesn't want it to get stolen, and it ends up disappearing. She's like, oh, somebody stole it, where did it disappear to? And then Classic pulls another fast one on us with the Doom Slug. Turns out that that's Doom Slug that took that form when they went into the nowhere. And she ends up finding it in the superiority base camp.
Okay, that sounds familiar. I remember there was
Yeah.
something going on with the pin.
So that was another like little twist that they
Mm.
had. So they end up having this big battle to fight over like the mining colony. Ends up being a draw because she finds out that the Delvers are planning to like launch a full scale attack against them, and so she also like has this like big fight with Hesho, um, who you find out survived and is now like the champion of another pirate colony. That's really fun. He can't remember anything from his old life, but he's still like sees himself as like this nameless warrior or whatever.
Mm.
Really fun character.
I do remember that, and I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. I think a lot of the other characters in this book are pretty forgettable. Besides Peg was important. You also had like other imaginative characters, kind of like Vapor. You had like they're almost like roots or minerals that grow over the ship. And
Mm.
so that was interesting. I'm trying to think of if there's any other notable characters that stood out to me. Not
I don't
really.
remember any. But take us to the kind of the final conflict and where this sets it up for Defiant.
Yeah, well, so the final conflict was so she knows that she has to get into the nowhere to escape. Like into like I forget what they call it, but it's like this big sun thing in the center of the nowhere that they're trying to get to.
Okay.
And that's where you travel to when you go into the nowhere, right? That's like what gives you the ability to transport is you go into like this place and it spits you out, and that's where the Delvers
Mm.
live. And so she's trying to get there, but the Delvers are like stopping her. There's like sending out starships to try and stop him. They're stop her, and um, they can't get there. And so um, Mbot does like a made you look where he like holographically shields them. He like lands, makes them get out of the ship, and then he acts as a distraction and ends up leading all the fighters away. As far as we know, Mbot dies, but not really. Like she sees like a little light go out of the ship as he dies or something. So we think that
Mm.
Mbot's still alive.
Okay.
And then end up getting to the nowhere and end up getting back to detritus. I think Hesho goes with her. Doomslug, they all make it back,
Okay.
and that I think that's like there might be some more falling action after that, but that's kind of the um, where the conflicts end. And she also kind of realizes that she is actually like become enough to become a weapon. She she also like I think it's something like Chet ends up um not dying as well and ends up I don't know. There's something with Chet that ends up happening like as a Delver. Um so she ends up um yeah, kind of becoming like getting enough knowledge where she feels like she's able to threaten the superiority.
Okay.
Or not the superiority, but the Delvers.
So she has progressed far enough in her Jedi Knight training that now she is the master and feels like she can take on the big bad,
Yeah.
basically.
And I guess to kind of backfill some information, the superiority has uh tried to make deals with the Delvers, and the Delvers are like, okay, we'll go along with this, kind of come when you summon us and not attack you. And
Mm.
so she's scared about that. Um, let's see what else. Oh, Jorgen is also like learning his powers. He's like training under her grandma.
Right.
Um,
There's a
to
few flashes to things happening
yeah,
and Detritus and Jorgen's there. And then at the end, don't they have a little romantic moment? They kiss
I
right at
think
the
so.
very end.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah, gotta have that.
gotta have that. So yeah, that's I think that's everything. If you
Okay.
know all that, then I think that you're going to be able to go into Defiant well
Into
prepared.
Defiant. Yeah. Okay. So setting us up for final big climactic conflict. Yeah, no, I feel like that was a pretty good primer. There's a lot of details there that you're able to fill in for me. So okay.
Yeah, and
Delvers, Cytonics, aliens, got it.
AIs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully, again, I I don't know for YA. So I guess I'm realizing that I've officially grown out of YA, like who I'm the intended target for, because I'm realizing
Yeah.
that, like, you know what I mean. Um, so I don't know. I don't want to be too harsh because I'm not the intended audience for this. And
So this
I
reread made you realize you're no longer young.
exactly. This reread of my back going out has made me realize I'm no longer young. Um, but I think I'll still be recommending, like, if there's any 12, 13, or 14-year-old that's like looking for a good book, this is like for sure a strong recommend for me. And I would
Mm.
even say, like, I I had a hard time putting it down at parts. I listened to it pretty quickly when I started getting back into it. So um I guess I enjoyed it. But those criticisms had, I still stand by all of those. So um yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair review.
Okay. So have you started reading the Defiant or no?
I have not. I was waiting for you to fill me in. So now that Ben has got me up to speed, we have the arc for Defiant. We'll go through that pretty quickly, hopefully, and get something out before release. Although it is coming
It's
up pretty
coming up.
fast.
Yeah,
I
we
think
should
it's
probably
like
say
20. I think it's the 21st of November, and it's going to be released in conjunction with the big Sanderson conference, Dragonsteel Con. Um, but yeah, we'll read through that, get something out. Hopefully this primer should come out a few days before. So if you are excited for the book, hopefully this helps.
yeah. I think this is also what Sanderson's fifth book this year, or is it his sixth? When did Wax
Well,
and Wayne 4 come out?
it was last year. That was
It was last year?
that was the last year Dragonsteel Con release.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is the fifth book that he's released in 2023.
And I know that Chansey is working on another Skyward Flight book. And
Okay.
she has a ticker that's on his website. So
Oh, that's right. Yeah. When Brandon does his weekly updates, he updates something about Skyward Flight. Clearly, this is a gap in our knowledge. So,
yeah.
don't crucify us that we don't know the Skyward Flight stuff. But if you are a big fan of the series, feel free to fill us in. You can hop on our Discord. Links for that are in the episode description. Let us know what we missed, what you're excited for, if you're excited for Skyward or not. Like, I feel like some people enjoy the young adults still, even though they maybe like us are advancing in age and can no longer be considered young. So kudos to you if you're still a big fan.
Yep. All right. Thanks, Steven.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. See you later.